My previous employer wasn't too comfortable with me having this persona. Now I went into the new job fully open arms, explaining, look, this is what I do. You know, the business development director is bought in, HR fully bought in, so on and so forth. So this is not me speaking out of turn. This is fully bought in. There is, you know, they've got pieces they've written about how Riley, you were quoting from one earlier. My employer is absolutely fine. Sister absolutely fine with this. So a month later, we'll talk about exactly what happens behind the scenes when we go through the sequence of the emails, because it gets fun and spicy. But a month later, I was, working away and got an email going, ooh, from a couple of bosses above me, calling me in and
say anything else, just that. Just verbatim.
Yeah.
Dear Gareth. Ooh. Can you sum it up in a word? No. A noise? Ooh.
I got called in and said, what evidence did you have for that quote? You know, we've someone has raised it. Network Rail has raised it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, here's some evidence. Bang, bang, bang. You know, quoted various bits.
It's like, I have been to Euston.
I think it's so funny to be like, can you show me the evidence of like passengers? and you could just be like, well, okay, you could just go to any platform on any day in Euston at any time, and you're probably likely to find it. You know,
what fool me is that I should have called said boss and said, yeah, sure, meet me at Euston on Friday at 4:45 in the evening.
Yeah, Peter Hendy going to London Euston Station is like a Barack Obama drinking the Flint water moment. It was just like films himself on a green screen in Euston, like, why, yes, I love it here in Euston. Look out, a fellow traveler. Why, let us meet up at some of the great shopping and dining options, such as Smith.
Unbeknownst to me, so like a few days pass, and then I receive a letter basically saying I have another meeting, and then in that meeting, said boss then says, yeah, you're suspended with pay. I'm like, oh, wow, what?
Turn in your gun and your badge.
Yeah, pretty much. Like literally, like hand in your laptop.
Turn in your autism sunflower badge. You no longer work at the train company.
You got to turn in that thing that like checks the QR codes for train tickets you buy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Behind the scenes, of course, what happened is that Hendy, and by the way, people love putting this stuff in emails. Nice, FOIA-able emails.
I swear to God, are you sending discoverable emails about trying to rat fuck someone out of their job? Like, literally, you could just email like, hey, could you call me about this on the telephone?
No one likes making phone calls anymore. It's a very anxiety-inducing experience.
Then you do your Nixonian stuff like on the phone. But instead...
No, send those emails, yeah.
So Hendy writes, please check whether we have or are currently employing Dennis, as we should stop. Accusing NR of operating the station unsafely is unacceptable, and we should challenge his qualifications to say so, and so on and so on. But ultimately, that wasn't just a challenge. Really, it was that Hendy is sort of contacting Nick Salt.
No, more of a kind of like sliding tackle into the back of the leg, you know?
Yeah, so it's worth just picking this up and say, so Hendy's contact was actually replying to the Network Rail internal kind of media digest. So there are a variety of theories of why he got pissed off. One of them might be that he just read that digest and got angry. He knows about me. He knows who I am. He got pissed off and had expressed that to me via other means when I called him out for being pretty anti-worker during the strikes a couple of years ago. So I kind of, he is clearly, and you see from the sequence of emails that go back and forth internally within Network Rail. So kind of these back and forth of emails that goes on, by the way, for a month before. So article in April, the meeting that I had with my bosses in May, exactly a month later. Sistra, by the way, absolutely fine with the article. That is a really critical point of the whole story. Sistra, no problems with the article. I'd shared it with my PR and the comms manager. They'd seen that, absolutely no problem with it for a month. All this back and forth of Hendy going, who is he? Are we employing him? Like increasingly, like clearly personal. People are suggesting this is like a non-personal thing, like it was just reputation protection. He was doing his job as chair. No, this was personal. Of it's him. I know he's a prolific consultant. I know who he is.
And eventually, it ends up with him going after Nick Salt, being like, what action are you taking on Dennis? Eventually saying, finding a potential supplier, criticizing a possible client reflects adversely on your likelihood of doing business with us or our supply chain.
Yeah,
again,
nice consultancy you got here. Would be a shame if something happened to it.
Say it on the phone.
you could even write something that implied that in a way that would would there left enough room for doubt. But that's unambiguously just like, by the way, I'm just going to threaten your business.
Yeah, and we'll pick up the ramifications of that sentence. So that sentence was written in a letter that was sent pretty much to the dot a month after the article went out, that went directly to Nick Salt, the CEO of my former employer. Now, a little fun tidbit. That letter was uncovered via both Freedom of Information Act request and Subject Access request. Came through the same part of Network Rail, the data protection officer, but they redacted different bits versus the two different legal instruments. So then just assembled it back together afterwards. It was good. It's very nice.
That's lovely. Again, phone calls, people. Phone calls.
That's yeah.
Here, say it with me. I do not recall that phone call. It's so easy.
Yeah.
All of that, right, is let's just like sum up, right? Because I think this is important, especially because we're going to go to talk about the Grenfell inquiry that was released today as well, right? Which is essentially that an engineer raises safety concerns, or not even raises safety concerns. An engineer notes that something is, broadly speaking, unsafe. The Euston was designated possibly unsafe by the Office for Rail and Road Improvement, and then Network Rail, not specifying what exactly they did whatever they needed to do to comply with the ORR, and so it said legally we are safe. And I think the important thing to do is to distinguish between an engineer's assessment of is this safe, will this hold up, versus the box-ticking regulator's assessment of does this meet our standards? Because the whole argument that Network Rail seems to be making is we ticked the boxes, we are legally safe. And I think there's this is something you've talked about, there is a moral imperative on engineers especially to design structures that are safe, which goes beyond has this met the minimum standards for regulatory compliance, especially given...
I mean, if you want to talk about regulators like that something is like, that's something that is regulated about being an engineer.
Yeah, we're one of the very few people left that have Bushido codes.
Basically, yeah.
It's true. It's in our code of ethics, literally, yeah.
Part of your Bushido code as an engineer is to put safety first, right? And this is something where you are putting safety first and then you are being sort of punished for it.
Yeah, and yet they have the report saying this is safe according to this regulation. You have testimony from disabled people, for example, saying, I do not feel safe here. You have your professional opinion being like, this isn't safe, especially for disabled people.
There's a couple of things I mean, absolutely, with all this, a couple of things to pick up. The first is that there are a lot of people on Twitter going, oh, anyone who talks out about, criticizes a client is going to, they can't do that. They're going to expect some consequences. You can't do this. Just going to point, yes, no, you don't understand engineering. Engineering is, as with any kind of profession that involves caring for people or a civic duty, like being someone who works within health or someone who works within the nuclear industry, something like this. You have a duty of care on the public. And as an engineer, I am bound ethically to describe anything that I perceive as an unsafe act within my kind of professional expertise or adjacent to it, by the way. It's my duty to raise that. And a lot of people, so other challenges were, well, you could have raised this through proper channels. The proper channels of, there aren't any for structural issues or for issues around accessibility, which is part of the bloody problem. But the official channels might be, through Network Rail, well, perhaps say through going through FOI requests to understand what changes they have made. Well, they've rejected all the FOI requests that have been made since the improvement notice was closed. People have gone, okay, what have you changed to make it safe? And Network Rail have rejected all of those requests. So how do we hold them accountable? Or you go through CIRAS, which is a reporting, ostensibly anonymous reporting thing for health and safety issues, located in the same office as the RSSB, the Railway Safety and Standards Board, which is a private organisation that ought to be part of the public realm. But it's been shown multiple times that it is not anonymous and that they have resulted in going after people who make that reporting. So no, and also the whole point is that the existing, going through journalism and raising things with the public, firstly, this is me talking about existing stuff in the public domain and essentially disseminate, again, another engineering duty, disseminating complex information to the public via the form of journalism. But also raising stuff through journalists that are a risk is an absolutely valid process for raising safety risks that you feel are not being paid attention to. That's a really key thing to understand.
And ultimately what we're talking about is the difference between safe and sufficient.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gareth, I'd like to know, this is something that someone who's talked about your case in response to the Grenfell inquiry, Arnold Tarling, who's a building surveyor and a witness for the inquiry, has said that the lack of care for safety rather than just box ticking could lead to, and this is his words, a Grenfell on the rails. And what we're talking about is that distinction between minimum and legal and actually safe.
Yeah, and that you have a regulator who has signed off on something, and that regulator is, has been through this era of deregulation, slashing of red tape and privatization. Like in Grenfell, that's the building research establishment. Here it would be the Office of Road and Rail. But in both cases, you have this case where something is patently, obviously a risk to a number of people, but the regulatory framework and just kind of institutional defensiveness don't allow for recognizing that, let alone ameliorating
that's exactly it. It's the defensiveness. It's the mind did not go to, right, is it safe or what are the challenges? It went straight to the reputational thing. I think a really key thing to dig into is that you will never make something perfectly safe. When we talk about the railways, it will never be perfectly safe. There are inherent risks in all of it. The discussion here is professional people describing that they think the institutionally decided position on that risk, or the balance of risk, is not the correct one, in that those risks risks are unacceptable, that they are, to use the legal term in my profession, not ALARP, not as low as reasonably practicable. That's the really key measure. And my view as an engineer is that Euston was not achieving that measure, that critical measure that as an engineer I have to achieve, which is as low as reasonably practicable. I do not believe it was achieving those. And that was the premise of, I'm making it more serious. Like the interview is very softball, but actually that is, as I've been challenged on it, I've had to go, well, no, my instincts are on this and my informed opinion based on a huge amount of other information, publicly available reports, leaked reports from HS2 when they're considering what the station will be looking like in 10 years' time, and then feedback from all the involvements in accessibility charities I do. I have lectured in station flow. I have worked on accessibility, worked on station flow plans, all this
Gareth,
stuff.
what you're forgetting is that might have been embarrassing for someone who counts as a full human.
Yes, that
might have been embarrassing for Peter Hendy, and who cares if a bunch of pig people get hurt?
You raise a valid point.
Yeah, or not get hurt, could get hurt.
Have you considered that actually you just might be woke? And that actually, and that actually, people really like standing for 4 hours plus on trains.